Well, well, well. What do we have here? This is the brand new 2019 ZX6R.
Let me hear you say, get louder.
And you're like, Johnny, how are you on a 6 up on blood? And I'll tell you how. Northeast Georgia Motorsports has been oh so kind in letting me take this bike on a test ride that's not in a city setting and put a few miles on it. So with this being the new 2019 model, there's some changes and there's some similarities. I'm not going to bore you with them all, but let's just talk about the highlights. As always, head on over to Kawasaki's website or link down in the description below on the full specs, tire size, fuel capacity, brake thickness, rotor thickness, all those key informative items. But I'm going to tell you the stuff you need to know and basically the hot topic discussion. So let's begin with the price. You know what? We're going to save that for last. We're going to talk about all the other stuff first. We'll just do a nose to tail assessment here. Let's start with the front. I think even the front fender's different. It's got a nice little cutout on it, real sporty, real edgy. Looks really cool. The headlights, you've got all new headlight design with a new front cowling design, LED headlights, high beam, low beam, and running lights. Nice big old ram air intake. It even looks bigger than the previous model, which is kind of cool. On up from that, the changes keep coming with the windscreen and the plastics and the fairings all the way to the gauge cluster and the dash, and it's the same one they use on the 400, I believe. It doesn't have all the doodads that the 6 has, I believe, because, you know, the 6, it's got, you know, gear indicator, fuel gauge, temp gauge with the actual temperature of the engine, you know, digitally, and then it's got the regular bar graph or bar gauge, if you will. You can adjust or change what you want to look at with the mode selector or the selection dongle. On the bottom, you can adjust to your range, which is all new, I believe, for the new ZX6. Average miles per gallon, current miles per gallon. Oh, and the intake air, the temperature of the air coming into the engine. Up top, real simple. You just have your odometer, trip A, trip B, and, you know, overall total miles. Got your speedometer, your speed indicator, nice big center face. And then in between that, just right below the speedometer, you've got your power mode, which it is in between full and low. Low is 75%, I do believe. And then you've got your KTRC, which is your Kawasaki traction control. You've got 4 modes total: off, 1, 2, 3. I know that's really confusing, but you've got off 1, 2, 3. 1 being the least invasive, 2 being more invasive, and 3 being super invasive. And I'm riding on with 3 because I want to see how the traction control works. I'm very curious to know how it intervenes and what it does. And so far, it has been intervening quite well. I'm not entirely too sure if this is the same traction control as the SKTRC, which is the Sport Kawasaki traction control, and it's a predictive system. With that being said, it actually will predict the slip from the ABS system, the wheel speed, and it'll intervene with fuel delivery, ignition, so your spark, and then your throttle input via the butterfly valves, which is crazy. And so far, with it being on 3, again, this bike has, you know, 122 miles, not that many. I haven't really dogged on this thing too much, but in first gear, I rolled on it pretty rough, pretty hard, gave it some juice. As the front end would start to unload, the tire's not coming off the ground, I would see the KTRC light pop up, and it's obviously telling you that it is intervening, and you can feel it because the engine power does cut. You hear a little bit of a kind of a nice little quiet exhaust pop. I can't wait to see what else it does. Low power and 3 on the traction control is like for your wet conditions, you know, gravel, or if you're, you know, on a slippery surface like that, construction area, kind of like we're in. Full power is for dry, you know, circuit and street, as the manual says. And then your power settings can be off 1 and 2. It's recommended for that. Realistically, we could probably run this at 2, but I want to see and feel this bike intervene, because I want to know how it works. But once we move on from that, you've got the same old ZX6 ignition, triple tree, clip-on, stuff like that. I even think the mode selector and stuff is the same. Same shell of suspension as the previous model. It's nice and soft for your street riding, but I wouldn't hesitate to take this thing to the track one bit. It's got the Nissan brakes, 4-piston caliper, and these things are amazing. They stop on a dime. They have really good bite. The bite is super good initially, and they just get stronger and stronger as you pull them. On back from that, plastics continue to retain the new aesthetic appeal. Side markers or the blinkers are the same. Tank is the same, but it's got, with these plastics, it's got a good leg lock. It feels really, really good. On down to the rear sets, you've got the Quickshifter, which is all new for the 2019 model, and it is included on all ZX6 models, so non-ABS, ABS, and ABS KRT, which is fancy. Just riding this bike in the mountains like I have, that Quickshifter, you take not having one for granted, because this thing is buttery smooth, really, really nice. And I haven't even, you know, obviously revved this thing out, so I'm curious to know what and how that will feel. So back to the Quickshifter, it is super smooth, the shifting up and then the clutch shifting down. So obviously you have to pull in the clutch to shift down. It doesn't have an auto blipper like the ZX10, although it can be done, and it's not due to the technology Kawasaki has implemented, it's due to the fact of technique. On from that, it's the same powerhouse that has been in the previous model, the 636 engine. No revisions or updates. It is the same. The big old muffler is an addition. That thing is ginormous, but there's nothing to slip on. Can't fix with that. The seat, from my understanding, and I rode the previous model, the seat is either flatter or it's a little higher on the nose, so it gives it a more overall height, if you will, height addition, or added height, golly. But it's nice and flat. You're not crushed to the tank. It's not too wide, but it's not too narrow, so you've got a good placement on it. And with that being said, the ergos between the handlebars, the seat, and the rear sets, or footrest, it's actually very, very comfortable. You know, the two most comfortable street bikes on the market are the Gixxer and the ZX6. I have ridden the old R6, the new R6. I haven't ridden a CBR though. I just now realized that. I have not ridden a CBR 600. So that'll be interesting to ride one day. Maybe I can get Red Spade to let me borrow hers. But this bike is so comfortable, and I've been up here for a little while because I don't know how to work a GoPro anymore, so there's that aspect of it. And then on into the tail section and rear end of this bike. Before I mention that, I do have to mention, since we are on the engine, the front sprocket has been dropped a tooth to give it that little bit more acceleration, you know, that low end lug that it already has. You know, this bike, low, mid-range is phenomenal. High-end, I don't know because I haven't gotten there yet. The rear tail section is all new, redesigned, super sharp, super aggressive. It matches the aesthetics of the front end of this bike amazingly. The only option or the only issue that I have with it is the rear seat. Now, it does look cool, great for passengers if you plan on doing some two-up riding, no big deal, but I guess you have to buy the rear cowl for it. But I'm looking at changing it into a rear cowl and, you know, just having a no passenger seat, if you will. Tires are Bridgestone S22s, I think Battle Axe, Hyper Battle Axe, something like that. And so far, so good. You know, they've been handling the twisty roads quite well. Very predictable. I should have dropped the tire pressure because they are pretty high, and that's manufacturer factory pressure. I love this bike a lot. And when you see this bike in photos, you're like, this is the most ugliest bike ever. Why did Kawasaki do this to a good-looking bike? It looks like a 400, and I have hated on this bike myself, but until I saw it in person is when I completely changed my mind. And the first one I saw was the Storm Gray, as they call it, and that bike is beautiful. It's like matte, but it's not, and it is super gorgeous. And then you've got the all black, and it's between a mix of matte black and gloss black. And then you got the KRT ABS as well. The only model that doesn't have the ABS is the base model. The base model does not have ABS, but all of them do have a Quickshifter, which is phenomenal. So that brings me to the price. The price of this bike is less expensive than the older model. That never ever happens with anything. They drop the price, and it comes with a Quickshifter, has all the traction modes and assist, rider assist, aids, what have you. They drop the price. That's unthinkable. So the base model without ABS, but again, $99.99 for the base without ABS. That's the black. Then you go up to the gray, and I think that's like $10,200 or something like that, $10,500 maybe. And then the gray model does have ABS, and then obviously you've got the KRT, which is this version, KRT ABS 11.5, I think it is. Obviously all those would have been on the screen. And even the KRT, don't quote me on this, I know it's cheaper than the KRT previous model, but I'm very curious to know if this KRT is cheaper than the base model ZX6 last model. That would be an interesting thing to find out. What? The rideability of this bike is phenomenal. I was talking about comfort earlier, and this bike is so smooth. You don't have a lot of weight on your wrist. Your feet on the rear sets aren't up into your chest. Your butt and your boys, and if you're a girl, your girls are not slid up and smushed up onto the tank. It's just a super smooth riding bike. Now, I cannot flat foot this bike, and that for some people and newer riders or riders that are getting into sport bikes and leaving sport or sport touring or nakeds, it can be a little intimidating. This bike, it rolls so smooth and so good that you don't even worry about it. I do have to tiptoe this bike all the way around. I have been having to adjust to it just because the only thing I ride is a mini bike, which is my Z125. It's not intimidating at all, which is just phenomenal. I talked about the aesthetics of this bike, but man, it's really hard to beat it now that we're in it, we're living it, we're looking at it. So let me know what you guys think about the aesthetics, the front end, the headlights, the change. Curious to know what you guys think. But yeah, let's get on it and ride. So with all these revisions, I might have mentioned that you were getting a ton of bike for the money. It's just crazy to think. And the bike, it's just so fluid. It's so soft in a sense that it doesn't give you that super hard, rigid sport bike feel. You know, it's very fluid. But the bike, it doesn't have a bunch of vibrations. You know, the engine heat that the bike outputs or puts out, however you want to word that, it's very minimal, which is very impressive. And this bike, it's great because you can ride it really smooth and soft in the city and things of that nature, or you can ride it aggressive and still be really comfortable. The bike's real nimble, it's very flickable. And one thing that I believe people don't realize about the 636 is it's 636 cc's, obviously. R6, CBR, they're only 600, which gives this bike a huge advantage on the street because you have a ton of usable low to mid-range torque. And it's really nice to have, because as you see, I'm in 6th gear and I'm just cruising. I'm just enjoying the ride at this point. You know, no super crazy redlining through these corners and straights and stuff, and it's really nice because this is an awesome street bike because you can take it to the track and let her rip. So guys, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think about the new ZX6R. If you love it, if you hate it, what you would change about it, if you have an old ZX6 or if you want a new ZX6. It's definitely worth the opportunity and going and riding this bike because it's really awesome. So thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications because I am coming out with more ride review videos as they get more bikes on demo, and hopefully I will demo something you like. Also, if you have a particular request on a particular model, leave that in the comments below and we'll see if we can't make it happen for you. Other than that, you guys ride safe, have fun, and we'll see you on the next one.